Some big changes may be coming soon to social media here in the United States and around the world. Twitter announced this week that the sale of the company to billionaire Elon Musk is back on. And the United States Supreme Court says it will rule on a U.S. law that protects big tech from lawsuits over third-party content posted on social media platforms. Well, here with more is Young Voices commentator James Czerniawski. Mr. Czerniawski is a senior tech and innovation policy analyst at Americans for Prosperity. James, it's good to have you with us again. So first, we all thought Elon Musk broke that deal with Twitter because he felt misled about the number of bots on the social media platform. So why is that deal back on now?
That's a great question. Thanks for having me on. I think that this whole ordeal with Elon Musk and the process of buying Twitter has been nothing short of turbulent, to say the least. So basically, he wanted to buy the company, and then, as you mentioned, he felt misled about the bot numbers, but he did waive due diligence. And I think it was becoming increasingly apparent, looking at his legal options with this lawsuit he has in the Court of Chancery, that it might not go his way. So I think that ultimately, at the advice of his lawyers, it made sense for him to go and send that letter to Twitter to suggest that he is willing to go back and continue with the purchase of Twitter at that original price of $54.20 a share, because that seemed to be the way that the Chancery Court was going to rule anyway. So this is still, I think, a welcome development. I always thought that this was the best result for all parties concerned, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that this is the last time we have to talk about it and that this just happens and goes through now.
Yes, I think he was facing $1 billion punishment or something for breaking that deal, so he may as well put that back into the company once he gets it. So how long will it take to finalize the deal, and what changes do you expect from Musk at Twitter?
Yeah, so I imagine that the deal is going to go and take a couple months to go and get sorted through the paperwork, because this was contingent upon Twitter agreeing to drop its lawsuit trying to force him to buy the company. So that has to get resolved first, and then they can go and move through the process. But we know that Elon Musk would certainly like to see Twitter be a little bit more open in terms of the content that it is leaving up on its platform. So there is some hope there in that respect. And that we think that he wants to make Twitter ultimately an application for everything, whatever that means. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities on the horizon. It's just up to Elon Musk to figure out how he wants to take this company and lead it underneath his ownership.
Well, something that may affect Twitter, I know it definitely will affect Google. The U.S. Supreme Court now says it will hear the arguments in the Gonzalez versus Google case. A decision is likely by early next summer. So explain Section 230 and what is at stake here?
Yeah, so Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act is basically it's a tort reform law. All it does is say that you, as a website, are not liable for content that is posted by third parties because you are not the speaker or owner of that content, right? It is just making sure that liability is being assigned where it needs to be assigned. You would not hold two people that got drunk and started a bar fight. You wouldn't hold that bar liable for the fight that those two caused. You'd hold those individuals responsible. That's what Section 230 essentially does, except in a digital sphere, right? And now this question that's being considered in front of the Supreme Court is whether or not, with terrorist content that gets posted to YouTube, whether or not Google could be held partially liable for that radicalization that can come out of that kind of thing if it pops up in a recommendation feed, right? So this would mean that there would have to be a lot more manual review. So that could mean that content creators would experience delays in getting their videos up because Google would need to go and make sure that there's nothing there that could possibly violate, those kinds of issues. And this is really, I think, a challenging case because, this is one of those situations where Google has to be right 100% of the time, and terrorists only have to get it right once.
Wouldn't they be led to have less freedom there because there'd be more censorship? They'd fear getting sued. Other social companies would now be liable for the content posted on their platforms by others. So more censorship, less freedom. What do you think?
If this goes against Google, it does lead to it being harder for us to express ourselves online, because when faced with the prospects of liability or hosting your content freely, they will go and cover themselves from liability. That's just an unfortunate reality of a business, right? So unfortunately, if Google is found to be held liable for this terrorist content that just realistically speaking slipped through the cracks, they take a lot of action against this kind of content already, right? And if they get found liable in some manner here by the Supreme Court, then you're absolutely right. It would result in more censorship. It would result in it being a lot more difficult for people to upload content onto YouTube and other platforms too. This is larger than just Google. This affects the internet writ large.
Where do you think all this is heading then, James? What does the future of social media look like?
I think we're in a bit of a transition period where a lot of the old traditional companies that we're used to, like Twitter and Facebook, are certainly in a stage of decline. And I think that we'll see some more changes to short form content, more engagement around recommendation media, where it's doing those trend dances or what have you. So I think that there's definitely a stage of transition that's going on here, and that it'll be interesting to see how social media continues to evolve over the near future.
Young Voices commentator James Czerniawski. Thank you, James, for sharing those insights. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.